I know that there's a certain time for everything, and that's also something in this space. You've got to know that there's timing. There's time to be behind the scenes. There's time to be in the camera. There's time to be, just the key player, and allowing for yourself to feel the room, to know the room, to read the room is one of the key things that can keep you in the room.
Welcome to the Helpfluencer podcast. I'm your host, Ted Bernard. Why do a podcast about influencers who help? Well, because we're Helpfluencers. We talk about the future of work and the disruption of the 40-hour work week. The 9 to 5 is becoming obsolete. Professionals want a more flexible work schedule, and technology enables that. We talk to people who have done it well and are now influencers in their space, hence Helpfluencers. We're building a community of creative professionals who believe in change, growth, and collaboration. Thank you for tuning in to Helpfluencer Podcast. Yo, welcome to the Helpfluencer Podcast. I'm your host, Ted Bernard. Today I've got with me Blair Walker from Klutch Management. I'm super excited to have Blair on the show today because I've known Blair for more than 10 years. And since I've known her, she's just been multi-talented, super ambitious. And I guess we've gone from in Miami to now living the LA life.
Yes.
Welcome, Blair.
Thank you so much for having me, Ted. I really appreciate the opportunity to sit here and discuss so many different, very interesting topics. Currently, a lot of entrepreneurs are facing in this age. It's funny, I got to know Ted through his brother, who I was competing with in high school at the NAACP AXO competition. His brother actually won the business plan competition right after I did. So I beat him first, and then he beat me second. And then I got to know Ted through a mutual client who I've also known for 13 years. After graduating from the University of Miami, I met one of my main clients, Zoe Alicia. I've built her brand when Zoe's her A&R, and she actually works very closely with both Ted and I. Her fiance, Dooney, does as well, who I've also worked with at the Lights Global. I've built a very it's sustainable career, actually, through the music industry, through working for Zoe and putting together different campaigns and marketing campaigns for these high-profile influencers.
Yo, you're on it. Jump my questions. No, just kidding.
Sorry. Did I do it right?
No, it's a podcast. You can do whatever you want, actually. So, but this is good. I glad. Like, one of the questions I usually like to start with is how we got to know each other, because that gives a lot of context to, our relationship when it comes to like business. Some of the things that we want to talk about in this episode is talking about like just who you are as a person and in terms of your career. And I think that with the pandemic, which is the next thing starting over, but with the pandemic, we've had to reassess who we are, right? I mean, like a lot of things that we thought we were before the pandemic, we realized when we were like secluded at home that we could rethink this. But talking about getting to know you, starting over, how important community is. You mentioned Zoe and Dooney, and I want to go in and talk to you about like when you were going on tour with them and being backstage. And I think there's a community in that's super important that like I would imagine that you lost during the pandemic, and just understanding how do you get back to community and how important that was, and pivots, like tips for 2021, like the rest of this year, now that LA is opening up in now a few days, tips that you would give people and what you're looking forward to yourself. So let's start. Tell me a little bit more about you. You talked about the business plan competition. What inspired you to be so ambitious so young, and how does that influence your life now?
Absolutely. I think my first job was when I was 12. And I was selling Avon products for my mother. She would actually get the magazines and I would order some of the products for her clients. I started my first job at 12. And my mom used to receive these Avon catalogs in the mail, and I would just basically take them to a network, which was her friends, because nobody was buying Avon at 12. And basically sell those products to her community. So that was the first community I built. It was through my mom. And seeing how everybody who's close to you is somebody who can buy something from you, refer you to someone, or eventually like you enough that they become a consumer. The pandemic, with my company, being backstage, managing artists, managing projects, in the music industry and out of the music industry has actually changed my business in a way that a lot of businesses are currently changing. Everything is becoming virtual, if not already digital. And I am in the digital marketing space. So that is really essentially the majority of my business online. So it actually caused me to go back inside, like inside the house, and then not be outside like everybody was not outside. And inside my house is where I actually conjured up more opportunities to find artists that were up and coming, find artists that need branding and marketing, find artists that are now, you know, everything's changing. The music industry is changing. The need for a label is changing. If you have certain marketing and branding tactics as an upcoming artist, you honestly don't need the label right now. So everything has been going under, I don't know how to say,
a transformation. Yeah.
phase.
So let's take it back a little bit and go from, so like, from my understanding, you're classically trained, you're a musician yourself, and doing this business competition, and like, you know, tell us a little bit about the background in music and background in business that kind of led you to founding Klutch Management. Tell us a little bit about your history and like just, I guess, education and business that got you to where you are now.
I was classically trained in piano since the age of 3 in Maryland at the Peabody School of Music, which is one of the most prestigious institutes. And then from that, I went to high school, did performing arts, did chorale. I entered this competition, the NAACP ACTO competition in piano. I won gold and I went to compete nationally. I also competed in the business plan portion, and I actually won that year, before your brother won next year. That year I won with a business plan for girls, a magazine for girls. So that was my business plan that won that competition. It was basically an outlet for girls, specifically African American girls, to go into a magazine, find hair care providers, find a community that they could relate to, find fashion, and then find business tips. And that was my business plan that won. After that, I went on to pursue music in LA, continuing after college because I wasn't able to focus on music in college. My dad wanted me to go to school of business. His mother is the reason I was in that AXO competition. She ran all NAACP AXO competitions from Maryland to Miami. So then after that, I was like, let me just do music. But I wanted to be in music in a way that I would actually be able to control my career. I didn't want to have to be told what to do with my career or what I should be sounding like, what type of music I should be making. So I wanted to be as close to the people controlling the music industry as possible. That way I could influence my career. And I started working for the highest executives in the music industry. Zoe was a former VP of A&R at Epic. Dooney did the top biggest music deals in the industry.
That's dope. That's dope. And so tell us a little bit about, like, what does Klutch Management do? Like, what's your full scope of services?
Absolutely. The Klutch Management is a digital marketing and branding company that is focused on generating leads, launching campaigns, and creating captivating branding, assets that would actually compel a person to click a button, purchase an item, or listen to you and trust you with their money, their life, their decisions, that are often life-changing decisions.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I guess I want to go into the community part because that also connects like Klutch Management with, working with executives in the space, right? Pre-COVID, I mean, I just see your gram and you've been backstage and you've been like just with some really big artists, and with that comes their entourage. With that comes just like constant travel movement. Tell us a little bit about kind of like that fast-paced lifestyle and kind of maybe what you look forward to post-COVID and like kind of what you maybe were glad like slowed down.
I basically remember backstage being one of the thrills of everything I've worked for, because when you're working behind the scenes. You're always trying to keep your head down. You're trying to make sure the artist has everything they need, the manager has everything they need, the campaigns are going in the right direction, and the music is there. I remember when I was backstage, even I was supposed to be the tour manager on Rolling Loud New York for Lil Pump. We had also Bass Swag, we had Christian Combs, we had Smokey Margella, and the DJ for Lil Pump forgot his aux cord. So we couldn't even figure out, how are you about to play the whole DJ set for Pump? This is our main performer, you know? I'm the person who has to wear so many hats, from finding the dongle just so that we can plug this up. And I'm looking literally at the whole audience of Rolling Loud, looking at me, trying to figure out, how am I going to allow for this DJ set to get played? But somehow I made it happen. And those are just some of the things that I'm always relied upon to do. People sometimes, well, the people that I have as my clients, they really know that I'm not going to be the person that has to be told or really handheld on what to do in a situation where we're backstage, where we're on tour, where we're even on a panel because you're booked as the speaker for Revolt.
Yeah, it's good to be proactive, right?
Yeah, so just knowing and thinking 10 steps ahead of your client is honestly the key. And, you know, I come from a hospitality industry, serving. Serving is my nature. So I'm automatically supposed to be anticipating your needs before you possibly anticipate your needs. And that's why I think I've been so successful in this space. Being a musician also has helped me, because I know as a musician, some of those emotions, some of those feelings that an artist can feel and struggle with when they're being in the limelight and when they're on their way to becoming a major artist. So it's honestly the best of both worlds. Some of the bad, I guess, if I were to find a negative, is just the fact that I'm not on the stage.
Yeah.
I would love to be on the stage, but at the same token, I know that there's a certain time for everything. And that's also something in this space. You've got to know that there's timing. There's time to be behind the scenes. There's time to be in the camera. There's time to be, you know, just the key player, and allowing for yourself to feel the room, to know the room, to read the room is one of the key things that can keep you in the room.
Dope. So we talked a little bit about like how, or we actually said this before we started recording, how you're the influencer's influencer.
Right.
Tell me, who should be an influencer when it comes to building your personal brand or a product or a service? Who should be an influencer, and how do you start?
I believe that anybody who wants to be an influencer should just have some component of self-control, because you are definitely in the eye all times after that point that you decide to be an influencer, and maybe even before. There's things that people will find on your past, find out about your history, that they will dig up, that will become relevant in the present. So I think anybody who wants to become an influencer is somebody who doesn't mind their image being in front of the public eye constantly, and possibly tainted, maybe criticized, picked at. You know, somebody who has very strong skin.
Right.
I also believe that influencers should be very intuitive about what they're presenting to their audience. There's so many ways to influence right now, and there's so many bad ways to influence. So I think that anybody in this influencer world should be really considering the ways that influencing can impact people positively.
Yeah, I think that one thing I heard that was pretty interesting is there's like a difference between being an influencer and being a manipulator, right? So, you know, the core of Helpfluencers is kind of building this community podcast and resource for people influencers that want to go into business. And I use that loosely because I think that there's a lot of business owners that are really successful that just don't have an audience, right? And there's people who have an audience but don't have a business. So the idea here is my question is, what should someone who wants to become an influencer think about in terms of business or monetization, or how to use that audience they're targeting to actually help them?
It's funny that you asked that. I was just showing my friend an artist who's on tour for Rolling Loud. He's on Rolling Loud December, Rolling Loud coming up in July. He's on all three. And I showed her his social media, and the views that he got on one of the videos was maybe around 567. So it's wow, this guy is big enough to be on Rolling Loud, but his social media is not even there. But for me, I'm passionate about him as an artist, and I know he's an artist.
Right.
So it's like, I would tell him, yo, bro, let's do a few more interviews of you, even just if it's no one talking to you. Let's pretend you're talking to someone. Let's have you just giving more information about yourself, educating your fans on who you are as a person, showing them more clips of your videos, maybe some behind the scenes, not just showing the video itself. Trying to at least create a strategy between now and Rolling Loud on how you're preparing for that major performance, because I'm sure you've never had one in your life. This is going to be the first major performance you've ever had.
Yeah.
So I think it's all about just learning who you're entertaining and then entertaining them to the fullest.
Right. And I'm glad you brought that up, or you responded like that, because one thing you've suggested to me in the past is coming up with pillars of content. So in a scenario like that, I guess what pillars do you think are like the most important in terms of like content creation for, like that duration of time?
Well, it depends on who you are. If you're an artist, if you're an entrepreneur, if you are a VP A&Rs, your pillars are going to be based on your focus. Like me as a digital marketer, my pillars would be branding, communications, event planning, because campaigns are events.
Right.
It's not like I have to have a ticket that you buy just to come to this event. Me launching your song rollout, me launching your website, that's an event. So event planning is one, and another one would be lead generation. So those are my 4 pillars. For an artist, I think they would want to put out snippets of their lyrics, people performing to their lyrics, them performing to their lyrics, and then new music or some of their interests that their audience can relate with.
Yeah. And so speaking of content, which platforms do you think are like the most important right now? I think during the pandemic, we saw that Clubhouse became wildly successful. But I think now, if the last conversations are accurate, it's kind of going down. But TikTok is still on the rise. Instagram, I think, is here to stay, but Facebook, not so much. What do you think are like the main platforms people should be on? From I guess music and entrepreneurship would be vastly different because I don't need a SoundCloud, although this podcast is on SoundCloud. but what are main platforms you think people should be focusing on?
It's funny. I do believe a lot in Instagram. But even more so on Facebook.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are kind of like sleeping on Facebook.
Yeah.
They don't realize that the audience on Facebook is actually more susceptible to anything that they put in front of them than an audience on Instagram. You could be pushing ads on Instagram and reach way more people on Facebook with the same amount of money.
Right.
Because Facebook has the largest audience.
Yeah, it's so confusing because you do Instagram ads through Facebook, right?
Right.
And you just have to know, I'm not like really well versed. I have like a couple of people that help me out with Facebook ads. And I guess it's not for the novice, right? I think that people who want to get into actually doing ads, they should, go to someone like you that knows what they're doing in order to push it. What do you think are some of the pitfalls and people trying to go it alone with that?
I think just for example, I was telling someone the other day, I'm doing an event for Pride. And I'm testing the waters, and, my partners are like, no, we need to focus on LA. Let's get our tickets from LA people only.
Yeah.
I said that is not very smart. There's going to be a bunch of people traveling to Los Angeles for Pride.
Right.
Pride is a huge market. You don't want to just target who's in LA. And then you have a lot of people in that community that are in Atlanta, that are in New York, that are in Dallas, Texas. So I call it a fishing net. I set out a fishing net, and it's really my water test.
Yeah.
So I see from that fishing net who comes into the net. And from that fishing net and who comes, I know then who to target.
Right.
Because I'm not just going to just target a specific group without knowing that that's my demographic. I want to test the water first and then see who bites. And then based on who bites, I'm now going to target those people only because I know that they're biting. And I know they're going to continue to bite. Right. And then we're going to have a whole meal with these people.
I like the analogies. I love the analogies. Yeah. So you're doing an event this weekend. And kind of the last pillar of this conversation is what to look forward to and how you pivot post COVID. So I see you're going out with a blast. I mean, you're starting an event, you're doing an event pretty much right away. What do you see for the rest of 2020? We have 6 months left.
I was even doing an event during COVID. Someone had asked me to get sponsorship for a Super Bowl party, and I'm calling people around the world like, "Hey, Diageo, yes, I need your liquor at this event." They're like, "Oh no, you're really having a concert in the pandemic." I'm like, Florida is the state of all states that doesn't seem to care. So yes, we're having a 3,000 attendee performance. But at this point, it's really occurring to me that events are going to be very important coming forward. Events are going to be so impactful, whether they're virtual, whether they're in person. Everything, I think, is about events. Just being able to be in the space with your community, being able to talk to community, being able for your community to see you, or whoever it is that has that community. Touching points with your people is very important.
Yeah, I think that people... the pandemic made people realize how much they didn't actually have, right? I mean,
or how much the importance is of a handwritten note.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like, let's say thank you by text. No, let's call people, because I don't really know if you made it. I don't know if you're alive. You know,
it's like crazy, right? Yeah.
A call can mean so much more right now than a text. So it's really about taking into consideration how to make a impression on people. In ways that other people aren't.
Yeah, I definitely think that's become super crucial. I think that's become super crucial because I think we took a lot of things for granted pre-COVID, and like we really like started to understand like what's important to us. So I know you've been going back and forth to Miami throughout the 2020, 2021. So what are you looking? Are you going to be doing more of the same? Do you have any pivots that you're doing? How's your business changing because of like how the world has changed?
My mom, my dad, they always ask me what's better, Miami or LA, and it's like I don't want to answer that question. I go wherever the money is, you know. I go wherever the pitfall is, because right now, you know, Miami was open, LA wasn't.
Right.
So it's like now I have to be back over here with LA and my executives in LA, because we still have this whole market of people that weren't really touched upon because we weren't open.
Right.
So then we're going back to Miami in a year, because then we know what's happening right now, and you know that become the next Silicon Valley. We're already preparing and we're buying office space. Yeah. So it's like I know now that I have to hunker down here for about 6 to 7 and 8 months and really, really, really just go crazy. Like on When Zoe, your A&R project, on my project, The Klutch, because we're even opening up a division right now for artists.
Right.
So artists really need websites. They need branding. They need Shopify stores for their merch.
Yeah.
So that's what I'll be able to offer through The Klutch as well. And I know the concerts we're getting ready to prepare for are going to be best prepared for here.
Yeah. A lot of artists are like now understanding the importance of entrepreneurship, right? Because like during the pandemic, not being able to tour, having multiple streams of income is like kind of the main thing. Like if you didn't, then you were slipping, right?
Right. Absolutely. Merch is so important. You know, I remember one day somebody had told me the importance of Chris Brown just having the merch. Yeah. Because, you know, that whole image that he had was at one point tainted. Yeah. And he wasn't able to perform. But what did save his career was the merch.
Oh, look at that.
So it's like, you know, sometimes just having a hat, like your sweater, I'm really super,
I
hate to admit when I'm jealous, but I am jealous. Like I'm about to come out with a whole line of The Klutch. Sweaters, polos, like anything.
I got one for you too.
Yeah, thank you.
Bring it down.
And you know, Zoe has her merch. We've been working on that, and Desto Dub even got on that project. Anything that you can leave your guests with, a gift. Yeah. Your clients, I call them my guests. Yeah. Because they're always in my house. Yeah. But
those are the best relationships to have.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And you know, when I was a waitress, we're always told to think of this restaurant as your house. Yeah. How would you treat someone in your house? Yeah. And you would never want them to want for anything, need anything. You would want to know what they need before they ask for it. Yeah. And I treat my clients the same way.
For sure. That's awesome, because that personal touch is like kind of I think sometimes what's been missing. I mean, well, we couldn't touch people, right? Right. But that personal touch is that personal touch is like what's missing. So tell us what last minute suggestions would you have for people going into business, influencers going into business? What advice would you give influencers to just like not only try to like, you know, push content onto people, but instead also help people?
There's a book I read. I think it's called The Giving Book.
Yeah.
Or is it The Giver? It's a small little book.
Yeah.
And when you sit around and have a conversation with somebody and you listen, you can figure out how you can help them.
Yeah.
They don't even have to tell you.
So The Giving Book, right? We'll have to put that link in your show notes.
Yeah, that's a book that's, read by most millionaires, most very highly successful people.
Yeah.
And it really stood out to me that this guy, he wanted to get something so bad, and the guy made him sit around him for a few months and say, hey, don't rush to get the millions yet. Just sit around me and see how great of a person you can become.
Yeah.
He's like, no, I need this, I need this, I need this. But instead, when you figure out what someone else needs and you try to help them get that, you get exactly what you need. So it's really a weird science. And I hear it all the time. Like, when you don't try to shoot, you score. So when you try to really, really
unless
listen,
you're Michael Jordan. No, go ahead.
Yeah.
But no, definitely, I subscribe to that, because I think that when you give, it's a vacuum, right? You're opening up this space where people can deposit into you. So
absolutely. And just make sure you're giving to the right people.
Yeah.
It's hard sometimes to tell right now, but the people who are your people will applaud you, they'll praise you, they'll motivate you, encourage you, and then they'll watch you help them and wonder how can they help you.
Yeah.
And it continues for years.
Yeah.
And in this book, you really realize that there's so much you can do to impact other people's lives.
Yeah.
In your own pursuit of success.
True. That's awesome. So tell everyone how they can find you online. Like how do we find you? What's where can people just get value from you?
We are getting ready to launch the website, which will be the Klutch Management, and it's the abbreviation for management, mgmt.com. You could also find me on Instagram at The Klutch. The Klutch is not spelled like with a C, it's spelled with a K. So it's TheKlutch. We're The Klutch on Facebook as well, and The Klutch is also on LinkedIn.
Awesome. We'll have the links in the show notes. Helpfluencers.com episodes.
Yes,
Blair Walker.
Helpfluencers. Oh my God.
So Blair, I really appreciate you getting on the show today, and looking forward to your progress.
I really appreciate you for having me, Ted, and I also want to just applaud you as well. Us working in the same space is also something that I find very interesting, because normally somebody would look at it as competition. And I started realizing the ways that you are trying to help me is actually making me want to help you more.
Look at that barter system. No.
Yes. And I realized that you're also helping me to kind of like narrow down things about my business that I could really focus on. That would be specifically my niche.
Yeah, I think rising tide lift all boats. So I don't really look at anyone. I don't think that there's no such thing as competition. There's like enough for everyone to eat. And like, quite frankly, I think that there's enough for us to eat more, there's like, I think that there's like so many big fish out there and people looking for people like us. So like, if we just support each other, there might be something that you look at in one angle that I didn't look at, or vice versa, So I definitely think there's a lot there.
Thank you for listening to the Helpfluencer podcast. I'm your host, Ted Bernard. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support us, please subscribe and share the Helpfluencer podcast on iTunes or anywhere you listen to podcasts. We'll bring you more entrepreneurship stories. For resources and highlights, follow us on social media at Helpfluencers. You can find the show notes and resources mentioned in the podcast at helpfluencers.com/episodes. Helpfluencers is CPR for influencers, entrepreneurs, and freelancers. We help build and grow your startup. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.
Yo. You ready?
Yes. Do I need to see the questions or?
No, just be asking them.
I know I'm probably the most different. I'm definitely not that guy I saw you in the podcast with. That makes billions of dollars. But I will be very soon.
Yeah. Very soon. All right. Ready?
Yes. You know? I feel like I gotta smile every time I pour my water. I think it's a product shot.
All right. So we talked.
Take this.
Now it's recording. I didn't know how to record. There's a record button that's separate than the.
I knew for some reason whatever you're about to say, I should be recording it. I'm so happy I did it. This man doesn't know.